Kinder George of Trinidad, who resided at Belmont St. George, died on Friday 28 October 2022 at the age of 37. Left to mourn her parents Yvonne John and Michael George, siblings Kizzy Houston, Keisha George, Darren Houston, Lydia Nayak, Sherwin George and Sean George, children Brianna Clark, Jaheim Jordan and Nehemiah Brown, cousins Kimberly Hilaire, Pamela Richards Bartholomew, Yolanda John, Ronell Houston and Lanisha Sherman, aunts Gloria John, Dean Pear, Louina George, Laurel Paul and Gemma Houston, Uncle Henry Isaac, brothers-in-law Larry Sylvester and Richard Plaza, other relatives and friends including Zoya Cobb, Karuna Alfred and Anique Williams. The funeral service of the late Kinder George of Trinidad, who resided at Belmont St. George, will take place on Tuesday 29th November at 1:30 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Bailey's Funeral Home Chapel and interment will be at the Center Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Everett Coutain of Cherry Hill St. George, a retired laundry superintendent at the government's laundry Darbo St. George, a member of the Cathedral Men in the Footsteps of Christ, passed away on Wednesday 26 October 2022 at the age of 88. Left to cherish his memories are his beloved wife Mavis Coutain, children Cyril, Patricia, Alicia and Carol, stepdaughter Sherma, grandchildren Al, Alion and Shem, great-grandson Aviel, other relatives and friends including Albert Lewis, Marilyn St. John, Claudette Henry, Frankie, Patricia Braffett, Kieran Braffett, Selwyn Maxwell, the Coutain family of Belmont St. George, John Wells, Pastor Davis John and his wife, Mrs. Yvette John, and neighbours of Cherry Hill and surrounding areas. The funeral of the late Everett Coutain of Cherry Hill St. George will take place on Tuesday, November 29th at 2 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception, Church Street, St. George's, and interment will be at the St. George's Center Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home.
Michelle Florence Slinger of Montague St. George passed away on Tuesday, 8 November, at the age of 55. She was the sister of Carl Henry, Aidan Dunbar, Ronnie and Sherilyn Slinger, and Barry Finley, aunt of Natalie Modeste, Calvin and Curtis Henry, Veron, Sean, Siobhan, Ashley, Rian, and Keela Slinger, Shawnell Cyrus, and Sherry and Sharina Jones, Ephraim Atia Goodin, Kyron Mudu, Shem and Imran Buckmeyer, sister-in-law of Joycelyn Henry, Joan, Carol, and Winifred Slinger. Many cousins, other relatives and friends including Claudette Pitt, Joanna Tama, Earl Thomas, Brenda Fletcher, Betty Bowler, Faye Roberts, and Attie Dubry, Terry and Jackie Williamson and family, Maureen Alexander and family, the Lindo family and Sampson family, Susan Charles and family, Sally and Slinger, friends and neighbors of Creighton, Bathway, Montague, and surrounding areas. The funeral of the late Michelle Florence Slinger of Montague St. George will take place on Tuesday, 29th November at 1 p.m. The funeral service will be held at the Berean Bible Church, Upper Lucas Street, St. George, and entombment at the Wilberforce Cemetery. Funeral arrangements have been entrusted to Lacroix Brothers Funeral Home.
Stephen Gibbons, also known as Victor Modeste of Ruquin St. David, passed away on Friday, 11th November 2022 at the age of 78. He was the father of Derek, Janelle, Melissa in Grenada, Melinda in Canada, Vanessa and Devon in Trinidad, grandfather of Shakira Giddens, Javon, Josh and Javel Bartholomew, Rishon Francis, Shamar and Shermia Moraine, Nishon Paul, Trevin Giddens in Canada, and Malik Giddens in Trinidad, brother of Cecil Giddens, Dennis Thomas Joseph and Carol Modeste, Sharon Regis in Grenada, and Desmond McIntosh Giddens in Trinidad, father-in-law of Patricia Charles, nephew of Christine Modeste, cousin of Anthony Modeste. Many nieces, nephews, other relatives and friends including Kirk Baker and family, Radisson George, The Modeste, Gittins, Christopher, Blesdell, Edwards, Samuel, George, Regis, Francis, Charles and Williams families of Rucane, Sarah Augustine and family of Harmony Hall, Maureen Dumont and family of Bellevue, the Bishop family of Petite Esperance, Desmond McQuilkin and family, and friends and neighbors of Rucane and surrounding areas. The funeral service for the late Stephen Giddens, also known as Victor Modeste of Rucane St. David, will take place on Tuesday, November 29th at 10 a.m. Funeral service will be held at the St. David Anglican Church, and interment will be at the St. David's Anglican Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home.
Christine Caroline U. Peter Francis, née Horsford, a former employee of Inland Revenue Department Carriacou of Leicester Carriacou, passed away on Thursday, 27th October, at the age of 57. She was the wife of Franklin Francis, also known as Taylorman. She was the mother of Kwame Francis Hamilton, grandmother of Kalina Hamilton, sister of Boris, Julian, and Christine Horsford, and Barbara Pivot, stepmother of Jumali McFarlane and Franco Gabriel, mother-in-law of Clinton Hamilton, aunt of many including Cherise Thomas, Francis and Joseph Julian, Carol and Jamie Pivot, Kenya and Chrissy James, grand aunt of Khalil, sister-in-law of Frankie, Angela, Girlie, and Kevin Francis, and Carl Pivot, niece-in-law of Margaret and Jean Benjamin and Cecilia Horsford, niece of Anne Roll in the Bahamas, Thomas Sonny Benjamin in England, Roy Benjamin, Leo Horsford, Furnace, Evelyn, Lorna, and Hugh Horsford, caregivers Patricia Bernard and Talia Joseph, close cousins of many including Carl Benjamin, Kitty, Javon Roll, Aline Roll Joseph, Jacqueline and Robert, and Pamela Benjamin, Clement, Saga Thomas, Wendy and Horsford James, Dr. Anne Henry, and Wayne Wilson, close friend of Brenda Prime, teacher Sharon Bishop McLawrence, Suzette George, and Enid Matheson. Other relatives and friends including Francis and Benjamin families, Horsford families of Winter Forest, Belle Plain and Belle Isle in Grenada, Patricia John and family, Helen Wilson and family, Joseph and Bristol families of Leicester, James family, Gertrude Joseph and family, and Phyllis Marshall and family, neighbors of Leicester and surrounding areas too numerous to mention. The funeral of the late Christine Caroline U. Peter Francis, née Horsford, of Leicester Carriacou, will take place on Wednesday, 30th November at 2 p.m. The funeral service will be held at the St. Patrick's Roman Catholic Church, Hillsborough, Carriacou, and the interment will be at the Brunswick Cemetery. Funeral arrangements have been entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home.
Joseph George, also known as Daniel Jeremiah of Hope St. Andrew, passed away on Saturday, November 5th, 2022, at the age of 99. He was the father of Lystra, Ezekiel, and Augustine Joseph, grandfather of Sislin, Eslin, Margaret, and Jeremiah, Liston and Isaac Joseph, Nandi and Cindy Gulabasing, Micah, Samantha, and Alana, great-grandfather of 25, including Fiona, Denise and Tanisha Jeremiah, and Marlon Joseph, great-great-grandfather of 25, uncle of many including John Braffett, Rebecca Panshu, Flora Braffett, Vernis and Jennifer Jeremiah, father-in-law of Ezra Joseph and Danley Beggs. Many cousins, other relatives and close friends including Anne-Marie Mitchell, Pastor Ashley Church, members of the Grand Bachelet Baptist and Holiness Churches, the Braffett, Mahorn, Jeremiah and Panchu families, the management and staff of M&N Hardware, and friends and neighbors of Hope, Grand Bachelet, Kuma and surrounding areas. The funeral service for the late Joseph George, also known as Daniel Jeremiah of Hope St. Andrew, will take place on Wednesday, November 30th at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Grand Bachelet Baptist Church, and interment will be at the family cemetery Hope. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home.
Matthew Francis Harry, also known as Bro and Harry of Winter Forest St. David, who resided at Madagascar St. George, passed away on Friday, 11th November, at the age of 66. Left to mourn are his estranged wife, Sherry Ann Smith, many children including Siobhan Mason, Genesis and Rohan Harry, Caden Nelson in Canada, Marville, Darville, Kendall, and Kendall Noel, Cassandra Greenwich, Maxine and Anson Isaac, Travis Chetram, Vanessa Noel in Trinidad, siblings Reginald Harry in Canada, Derek Harry in Trinidad, Alwyn Harry, Javon Nixon, Brenda Harry Duncan, Patricia Harry Charles, and Janice Harry Smith. Many grandchildren, nieces and nephews. Many other relatives and friends and neighbors of Grenville and surrounding areas. A private service for the late Matthew Francis Harry will be held privately on Thursday, 1st December at 1 p.m. at Bailey's Funeral Home Chapel, Caroline St. George. Funeral arrangements have been entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home.
Alva Max Jr. Renaud, also known as Renaud of Seamoon St. Andrew, a former worker at the Ministry of Education, Youth, Sports and Culture, died on Saturday, November 12, 2022, at the age of 43. He was the father of Jalen Smith, brother of Alison McMyer, Alice Renaud Purcell, All Renaud, Lincoln and Michael Duncan in Grenada, and Denise Coxter Lewis in Canada, uncle of Rhiannon Hall, Cherise Hall, Sarhana Hall, Ramon Hall, Isron and Arisa Purcell, Keisha Jack, Aline Renaud, Telly, Marlene, Marcine, Mikey, Desiree, Drew and Derek, nephew of Gloria Batiste, Mona Renaud, Irma Bell, Jocelyn Renaud, Clarence Renaud and Arthur Renaud, brother-in-law of Tyrone Buckmeyer, Frieden Purcell and Derek Lewis, dear friend of Alana Bain, Akeda Vento and Zakia Collins. Many cousins are the relatives and friends too numerous to mention. Neighbors and friends of Seamoon, the Cocoa, Paradise, Telescope and La Follette, the graduating class of 1995 of the St. Andrews Anglican Secondary School, SAS, the employees of the Ministry of Education, Youth, Sports and Culture, especially the unit where he worked, YouthBiz, and employees of the Grenada Development Bank. The funeral service for the late Alva Max Jr. Renaud, also known as Renaud of Seamoon St. Andrew, will take place on Friday, December 2nd at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Grenville Evangelical Church, and interment will be at the Grand Bras Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Ashel Elana Mary Landor of Leicester Carriecu, a former employee of Marine Protected Area, passed away on Sunday, November 6, 2022, at the age of 25. She was the mother of Damali Landor, daughter of Mary Julian and Bernard Landor, sister of Alan Alexander in England, Ariel and Akel Landor, and Kathleen Alexis in Carriecu, granddaughter of Cynthia Landor and Doreen Julia, companion of Quasim Nimrod, niece-in-law of Rosalina Landor, Barbara Charles and Dominic Daniel, niece of Alistair Charles, Bernadine, Bernice, Brian, Dexter and Linton Landor, Ashlyn, Ashley and Fendrick Julian and Veronica Adams, aunt of Ethan, Evron, Alex and Keon, close friend of Charmaine McNeil, Randy Fraser, Ricardo Landor, Carmi, also known as Jojo, Carmen Phillip, Khadija Felix and Daniel Sylvester, Veronica, Shermel, Christel and Javon Nimrod, close cousin of many including Ricardo, Brenda and Emma Julian, Kira and Roshana Landor, Cordelia Charles, Megan, Katie and Kayla. Other relatives and friends including the Julian, Landor and Joseph families, the Torn family of Grenada, Sharon Bristol and family, the MPA family, Louise and Mayoni Joseph, Matthew Joseph and family, Brenda Samuelson and family, Emma Scott and family, teacher Yoland Placid, and friends and neighbors of Leicester and surrounding areas too numerous to mention. The funeral of the late Ashel Alana Mary Landor of Leicester Carriecu will take place on Tuesday, December 6th at 2 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Leicester Rosary Catholic Church, and entombment will be at the Leicester Crossroads Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Matthew Durantit, also known as Soft Tire, of Moran St. John, who resided at St. George's Estate, passed away on Tuesday, November 1st, 2022, at the age of 77. He was the father of Paul Badassi, Doreen Benjamin, Evelyn Badassi, Ted Badassey, Joycelyn Francis, Dexter Badassey, and Gracelyn Griffith. Grandfather of 20, including Osbert, Wendy, and Shrika. Great-grandfather of 18. Great-great-grandfather of 2. Brother of Peter, Isaiah, Solomon, and Norris in Grenada, and George in England. Father-in-law of Peter Benjamin, Henry Hazard, Leo Francis, and Trevor Griffith. Brother-in-law of Yvonne, Balbobin, Kuman Singh, and Isaac in Trinidad. Uncle of many, including James and Albert. Other relatives and friends including Kentuff and the boys by the shop, the Williams family, the Badassey and Durangett families of Moran and Lamode, and friends and relatives of Moran and Lamode. The funeral service for the late Matthew Durangett, also known as Soft Tire, of Moran St. John, who resided at St. George's Estate, will take place on Tuesday, December 6th at 2 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Beaulieu Seventh-day Adventist Church, and entombment will be at the Beaulieu Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Anna Cador, also known as Mama, of Grand Roy St. John, passed away on Sunday, November 20th, 2022, at the age of 91. The funeral arrangements for the late Anna Cador, also known as Mama, of Grand Roy St. John, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Keith David Caliste, also known as Kesor, and Kesor Ball, of Pomrose St. David, passed away on Tuesday, 8th November 2022 in Canada, at the age of 62. The funeral arrangements for the late Keith David Caliste, also known as Kesor and Kesor Ball, of Pomrose St. David, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Francis Mitchell Kim Andel, well known as Kim and Pei, of Victoria St. Mark, passed away on Monday 21st November 2022. The funeral arrangements for the late Francis Mitchell Kim Andel, well known as Kim and Pei, of Victoria St. Mark, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Percival Kenneth Alexander, also known as Paul O. of Snellhall St. Patrick, passed away on Sunday, November 20th, 2022, at the age of 92. The funeral arrangements for the late Percival Kenneth Alexander, also known as Paul O. of Snellhall St. Patrick, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Muriel Albertina Taylor of Griffin Lane, Grenville St. Andrew, passed away on Thursday, November 24th, 2022, at the age of 88. The funeral arrangements for the late Muriel Albertina Taylor of Griffin Lane, Grenville St. Andrew, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Wayne's Funeral Services Limited.
The management and staff of MTV extend deepest condolences to those of you whose loved ones have passed on. Thank you for watching.
Hello, I'm Pastor Eddie Lawrence from Alabama in the United States and a personal friend of Pastor Hathia Casey's. I understand you may be going through a very difficult time today. I want to encourage you with a scripture from God's Word. The Lord says that He is near to those whose hearts are broken. Obviously, with the loss that you are enduring, your heart is broken, and He came to heal those whose hearts are broken. And though you may not feel God's presence, rest assured, He said He would be near to you because your heart is broken. There's a scripture in 1 Peter chapter 5:7 that may be comforting to you during this time. You may have lost a husband or a spouse, a wife, a father, mother, brother, sister, close friend. Jesus said in 1 Peter 5:7 to cast your cares upon Him because He cares for you. Just like the boats out in the harbor here in the St. George area. When storms and winds come, in order to be secure where they're anchored, they have to make sure that anchor grabs solid ground underneath and the boat can become stabilized. I encouraged you in these days of sadness and grief to let Jesus be the anchor in your life. He'll give you stability during these stormy days. I pray God's blessings over you, and may you feel the peace of God fill in your heart, and may it fill your mind and pass all understanding. May you know that God loves you and that He is with you.